process to appoint a new National Director of Public Prosecutions is underway. President Cyril Ramaphosa establishing a panel for the selection of the next NDPP who will replace Advocate Shamila Batohi, whose term of office ends in January next year. Justice and Constitutional Development will chair the panel to talk about the performance, successes and failures of the NPA. We have legal analyst Emmanuel Netshipise, as well as the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mmamoloko, Kubayi, who joins me now on the line to explain how the process will unfold. Minister, let me start with you. Just in terms of this announcement by the President, many commentators say the President was a bit late off the mark, given the amount of work that is still to be done, and January is not that far away. Tell me about where this process leaves us, where we are with this process, and how it will unfold going forward.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, thank you for taking us. My apologies, I can't be on screen. I'm on the road. Just to indicate in terms of the appointment process, I think you would have seen the President has appointed a panel. The panel will meet first time next week. Out of that, and then the panel will be able to issue an advert or call for nomination. Once the call for nomination, it will be closing within 14 days. Out of that, then a shortlisting will happen. Once the shortlisting has happened, then the screening of the shortlisted people will be done to make sure that the people that are being interviewed actually meet the minimum requirement, do not have criminal records and all those things. A questionnaire will be sent to the individuals to complete, to be able to give us additional information that we require. And out of that process, then the panel will do the interviews and then shortlist and recommend to the people that the President would have to look into. If you look at the previous process that was led by Minister Hadebe, the panel actually shortlisted about 12 people that they took into the interview. Yeah. And then out of those, then they recommended about 5. So we will discuss on Thursday with the team what is our shortlisting number and how many people would be recommended to the President. We wouldn't want to recommend too many people, so that it can be a process that is easy. And Minister, the process you've just outlined is actually, I'm glad you did it that way, because that's exactly the timeline that the people who are saying the President was late off the mark cite. For instance, that 14 days period where you basically won't be doing anything while you are waiting nominations and applications. Then there's the, trimming it down process that you were describing a few minutes ago. Then you get into the interviews. It would seem to many that you will crash into the January deadline. Look, from the timelines, as I said, we will issue a proper statement once we've met with the panel. We'll issue the time frames. From where I'm sitting, I don't think so. Having experience of run interviews in government, we're currently sitting at JSC doing judges interviews. So I don't think so in terms of the process, I must say to that. All right. Minister, pause there for me for a moment. Let me bring in Emmanuel Netshipise, legal expert, to comment on this process. Emmanuel, good afternoon and thank you for your time. So this is rather different, is it not? Take me through how ordinarily a National Director of Public Prosecutions is appointed and how this process aligns or differs with that ordinary process.
Thank you very much, sir, and to your listeners. Ordinarily, like what the President has done, there will be an invitation to all interested persons to submit their resumes to a panel established such as this one, which has been established by the President. Then after that, there will be a selection of those candidates who meet the criteria which will have been set out, and they will undergo a process of interviews, then the successful candidates, then the name of the successful candidate will be forwarded to the president for the president to make an appointment.
What are the key requirements for a person to occupy this position of National Director of Public Prosecutions? And how important is it that the person has the right blend of qualification, experience, as well as temperament, and just values as well?
Given that the National Director of Public Prosecutions oversees the prosecution in the whole of the Republic, and that the prosecutions involves the matters of law, the qualification which the candidate must possess is a law qualification. And on top of the law qualification, you will expect that the candidate must have a vast legal experience, which range from the knowledge of criminal law and procedure, evidence and administrative law, and labor law, since the person oversees also the management of all the prosecutors in the country. Then on top of that, you will expect other qualities, such as that the person must be non-patronic, and the person must also be fearless and also be independent, because these I will say, given that the incumbent has mentioned, for example, that there has been allegation of political interference in the running of the NPA. So you need someone who will not be affected by any interference.
Minister, just coming back to you, what lessons are you taking from the process that was undertaken to select the current NDPP, Advocate Shamilla Batohi, one, but two, her tenure in office, her successes and failures as well? Are there lessons? Is there something you are taking from there that you are taking into the next process with that in mind, to say, with the promise that she came in with, was she able to then deliver on that promise, and how do you do it differently if you have to this time around?
Correct, two things that the professor said. One, the incumbent never mentioned that there was a political interference. What Advocate Batohi mentioned was that there was issues of infiltration. It was never, and she clarified publicly that there's never been a political interference during her tenure. I think it's important so that we don't have the public thinking that there's been political interference and said by the current NDPP. Otherwise, she should have an issue with it, but I didn't correct. And the second thing I want to correct is that in terms of appointment of the NDPP, previously it's the president that would appoint. It was the first time that President Ramaphosa with NDPP Advocate Batohi that he did a process. And that's the one that I outlined. So there's never been previously any process. So this is the second time we have that, and that's why I wanted to correct the prof in terms of the sequence of areas, because he had noted correctly the way it was done. Coming to the issue that you have raised with me, in terms of the work, I mean, we can't ignore the fact that NPA, like any other institution, was affected by state capture. And there would have been prosecutors, especially the leaders, that would have been taken through inquiries. You remember Mukhoro inquiry, where eventually some of the colleagues had to be removed out of office. And that is part of what he had to deal with when she got in. So part of the issue about rebuilding NPA was about bringing the skills, as we can say. The issue of independence, I agree with the professor, it's important that we must ensure that the NPA operates independently, without fear, without favor. But what we have seen over time, especially during this term of Advocate Batohi, dynamics and what the complexity of NPA had to deal with, it's different. For example, now we're dealing with specialized crime, especially commercial crime. We're dealing with issues of corruption. So it needs a person that also is affair with those issues. Because previously your prosecutors would have focused on, criminal matters, would have focused on labor matters. But now at a national level, the work of Asset Forfeiture Unit became very critical. The establishment under Advocate Batohi of IDEC as part of fighting crime and corruption, or corruption in terms of that, it's quite critical. You would have seen the role that NPA had to play in ensuring, as we got into the grey listing, getting us out. So that work needs to continue. That legacy must be protected and it must be sustained. So as we go into the process of looking for a future NDPP, these are some of the things that one has in mind to be covered.
Minister, it would be remiss of me to not take the advantage of us talking now and ask you about whether or not you've been able to inquire of the NDPP and the team at the NPA about some of what we've heard from the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, as well as what we've heard coming out of Parliament, in particular as it relates to the investigative directorate against corruption and the allegation basically being made by General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi that there's basically two strands of people and personnel in the IDEC. People who are there to serve and who are good people, but also he maintains that there's a strand that is there for ulterior motives and are not serving the public and are not good people to be in that institution. Have you been able to inquire about that, and what's the response that you've gotten?
Deliberately, I've not entered into that area, noting that the colleagues will be testifying in the areas in both Madlanga and the portfolio committee, the other committee, sorry. Now, you do not want a situation whereby it looks like the minister met the team to influence them on how they must respond or how they should deal with. What I have done is to interact with the NDPP as the head of the organization that she must, one, make sure that those who are doing well are protected. You would have seen even some of our prosecutors that are being killed. As a broader issue that we have done during the strategic plan session, I also emphasize the need for all of us to operate in terms of ethical standards. What we have agreed as well as protecting those who are doing well and rooting out those who are not doing well or who would be in cohorts with wrong people is to start with the issue of lifestyle audit, because that would be an issue that starts raising flags in terms of where the challenges are.
Yeah.
And also, I said to NDP, for example, one of the issues when we looked at the appointing acting person for Gauteng, Johannesburg South, I went and said we need to, both myself and the NDP, because the process involves me and her, that we take somebody from outside Gauteng so that we can immune the office in terms of the investigation by the two bodies so that we don't have it compromised. So there is work that we do without interference, because it's always important for the minister to remember that the Minister of Justice should never interfere with prosecutorial responsibility.
Absolutely. All right, I've got to leave it there. Thank you for your time this afternoon. That's the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mmamoloko Kubayi. And of course, we were joined earlier on by legal analyst Emmanuel Netshipise, just reflecting on the processes that will now unfold to try and identify the country's next National Director of Public Prosecutions.